What is up, everybody? We're on to week 3 of the 2021 NFL season. It's kicking off tonight with a game between the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. Not the best matchup we could hope for, but feels kind of like a Thursday night game if if I could really draw one up, especially with an injury to the Houston quarterback, Tyrod Taylor or Tyrod Taylor. Now, Davis Mills will be taking the start for the Texans. According to FanDuel Sportsbook, this total 43.5, not the most fantasy friendly. And we got a big spread of 7.5 points in favor of the road team, the Carolina Panthers. So we're looking at roughly like an implied team total score of about like 25 to 17, kind of in that range. Not the best, but for a single game DFS slate, it doesn't matter. We don't have any other options. We got to figure out what to do with this game. So welcome on in to the FanDuel NFL Q&A for the week. I'm your host, Brandon Gdula. I'm the managing editor over at numberfire.com. You can find all of my content over at Numberfire. Do a bunch of simulations, start sit stuff if you're looking for season long recommendations, some pace and pass rate, adjusted matchups. That's all up on Numberfire. And be sure to check out the Heat Check Daily Fantasy Podcast, where Jim Sonis and I go over the entire main slate for week 3. That pod is out, comes out every Thursday. And then we also do a recap show on Monday mornings at 9 a.m. going over the relevant takeaways. I think that's probably our best, the best piece of content that we can do, because we're not really looking and projecting and trying to figure things out from an upcoming week standpoint, but we're looking at, who's getting volume, who's getting relevant work. So that is always good to add in to your process. It's honestly super helpful for me. Jim is going to be on the right on after me at 4:30 to answer all your MLB questions as always. But speaking of that, remember, this is a Q&A format, so get your questions in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, whatever you're kind of thinking. I'm primarily going to cover the DFS slate. This is the first time I'm doing this. I try to build some stuff to show everyone, help answer some questions. Guaranteed I'm going to have some hiccups, but that's all right, because we'll get this thing ironed out throughout the season. I think the main question, and I know the main question for the DFS slate, is what we do with Christian McCaffrey on FanDuel. That is going to dictate a lot of things, but I have some numbers on historical optimal lineups and single game slates in games with like lower totals, some kind of bigger but not massive spreads. So we will figure out what to do with that situation. Comment from Bandit Berry first on YouTube. Yes, I believe you were first. Question from Chris Phelps. Steelers versus Bengals. Steelers win by 6. Who you got? I would probably also just go with Pittsburgh there, but I don't. I'm not really into what the Steelers offense has done. But I do think that they would probably pick up that win for the week. Chris says, I like Houston's tight end. Okay, so I'll just dive over to the first bit of what I wanted to go over, and that was kind of some historical optimal lineup information, and then we'll get to Houston's tight end. Again, I'm going to have some hiccups here, basically just kind of trying to go split screen here because in case I get some props. But I want to start off with some historical optimal lineup analysis, just in games where the totals have been under 45 or 45 or under, with a spread between 5.5 and 10 points. This covers the 2019 and 2020 season, whenever we've actually had a single game slate, so that I could run an optimal lineup after the fact. Now, one thing that kind of jumps out here, and I'll bring this up a little bit closer, in these game environments, we actually do see quarterbacks drop in the percentage of the frequency that they are actually the optimal lineup MVP, that kind of is easy to explain. If we're looking at kind of heavier spreads and we're looking at games without a ton of points, it's really hard for a quarterback to pile up a bunch of fantasy points if there aren't numerous touchdowns. And if you don't run the ball, it can be really difficult to just tack up the most FanDuel points in a particular game. And we see a little bit more of an emphasis on running backs here. So that's going to go into the Christian McCaffrey conversation. Now for tight ends, we do see a slight bump up with the MVP discussion, but no tight ends in this game are going to be relevant in terms of an MVP consideration set. But I do think that going back to the Christian McCaffrey situation, a lot is pointing to CMC. So that is going to be really hard to differentiate from. I would imagine Christian McCaffrey winds up being in about 45 to 50% of MVP slots. Now, if you are trying to pivot away from Christian McCaffrey, the data still says that we should be looking primarily at the quarterbacks, and for me, that's going to be Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold will prove to be potentially the biggest leverage spot for tonight's game. So that's kind of the way that I'm playing it primarily for the week now, or for the night. So going back to Houston's tight end, I will just jump into my simulations for tonight's game. I had to rerun these quickly just due to some updates for Anthony Miller. But here's just a kind of a snapshot of the potential for every player to kind of finish as the MVP on FanDuel for tonight. We see Christian McCaffrey leading the slate over about 54% of the simulations that I ran. So from this context, if I assume that he's about 45 to 50% rostered at MVP, we're getting some leverage here on Christian McCaffrey. So that again just dictates a lot of everything. As for the tight ends, I'll just filter. And here's the reason that we probably just don't want to play tight ends at the MVP ever. But just the whole, I mean, we can see them with flex-worthy performances, but overall, just not enough percentage chance that they are finishing as the top scorer. So we're going to want some tight end exposure kind of overall, just because of the kind of state of the game. There's not a whole lot of fantasy relevant options, but just keep that in mind for tonight whenever it comes to the tight ends. Question from Richie: Terry McLaurin or Debo at flex PPR? I would go Terry McLaurin there. Need a sleeper tight end for this weekend's game from Nick on Facebook. Nick, I'm primarily focusing here on the Thursday night game. You can head over to numberfire.com and look at my start sit column. That actually shows the percentage odds that every tight end who's somewhat relevant will finish as a top 12 tight end. So you can kind of dig through and see who might be on the waiver wire there. If you're talking DFS for this week, not the sneakiest maybe, but Jared Cook would be on the radar for me at a salary of 5,300 in a very big shootout game for the Chargers and Chiefs. Question from Andrew: does Pharaoh Brown get enough looks tonight to run on daily roster? So that's a good question. Pharaoh Brown. So these projections here are based in Numberfire's expectations. We're not seeing a whole lot of love for Pharaoh Brown now at the salary of 5,500. Like if Christian McCaffrey winds up dominating this game and there's not a whole lot left over for anybody else, someone at a salary of 5,500 who puts up even 5 FanDuel points can make an optimal lineup. For me, I think we have better options, specifically with Anthony Miller at 5,500. It's kind of a high risk play here tonight with Anthony Miller. Did not play the first 2 weeks, coming back from an injury, but kind of also a healthy scratch. With the injuries to Nico Collins and Danny Amendola, a lot should open up for Anthony Miller in this offense. Now, how much can actually be opened up in an offense run by Davis Mills against an elite defense kind of remains to be seen. But Anthony Miller at 5,500, and then for anybody who knows me, this won't be surprising. Chris Conley would have some interest for me. Conley's going to most likely run about as many pass routes as Brandon Cooks, but get maybe a fourth as many targets. Brandon Cooks has dominated targets for Houston so far. Chris Conley kind of stepped into a bigger role once the injuries hit, just not a whole lot of volume. So that kind of does narrow things down. And very few guys even profile for somewhat relevant MVP odds. And that does dictate things because we got to figure out our flex positions, but we also need to figure out what we're doing again with Christian McCaffrey, seeing if we might want to pivot any other ways at MVP. So Brandon Cooks and DJ Moore make a lot of sense as pivots away from McCaffrey if we're not trying to play Sam Darnold. But again, Darnold easily the best pivot away from McCaffrey for tonight. Question from Brent: pick 2, McLaurin, Lamb, and Anderson. McLaurin and Lamb. Question from DJ: Anthony Miller finishes with the most catches yards for Houston. So again, I just touched on Miller. I would think it's a stretch that he does that just because of Brandon Cooks and the role he has had. I'll pull up some stats here. Brandon Cooks has run 95% of the routes for Houston. He's also got a 35% target share, 54% of the team's air yards. I'll filter this down just to Houston to kind of get a feel for, again, Anthony Miller's not going to, his role is not going to be it's not really predictable what they're going to do with him. But you see the target shares for everyone else just very low overall. So it's kind of hard to get interested in loading up on anyone other than Brandon Cooks. Again, I would imagine that Chris Conley is the safest bet to run a bunch of routes. He can get a high ADOT. He just also he's never really flashed the huge upside that I would like for him to do as a Chris Conley fan. But I would say Anthony Miller very, very much in play as that secondary option behind Brandon Cooks among the skill players for Houston. Thoughts on Brandon Zylstra? So I'll go back over to the stats here. Flip over to Carolina. I mean, so it's important to remember that we can get cute with single game slates and really try to find someone who is low salaried. What's Zylstra here and what's kind of his outlook? So not a whole lot there. 2.3 was his median expectation at 7,000, the same salary as Chris Conley. That's a little bit difficult to get too excited about, but we do see 1.5 targets, just a 4.4% target share. I know he had that touchdown. I would probably say not really any interest aside from maybe sprinkles that really make your lineups work. But again, we have Chris Conley and we also have Anthony Miller here. So I'll filter this by guys at that salary or lower just to kind of get a feel for the median expectation. So it's going to be Conley, Miller, Jordan Akins, Andre Roberts. Chuba Hubbard's kind of interesting if we really think this is a route. You can sometimes see the double running back stack if Christian McCaffrey dominates and then bring in Hubbard. But Zylstra, I think really, if you're building maybe 5 or 10 lineups, I wouldn't get there myself. If you're building 150, sure, but I haven't seen enough from him to get too excited there. Jim Sands, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Put Conley at MVP, coward. I would. I've done it in the past. That's not a lie. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I know Jim's trolling me here, but even if we're trying to differentiate at MVP, we have like the easiest leverage just because Christian McCaffrey is going to be so crazy chalky at MVP. And again, Sam Darnold, just makes sense here. If we go back to the optimals, again, even though in these lower totaled games, quarterbacks are a little bit less likely to finish in the optimal, they're still 41%. They're still the most likely position. Now, this doesn't account for team context and just in this specific instance, Christian McCaffrey is not 33% likely to finish in this kind of game as the MVP. I'm at 54.3% to finish. So like 20 percentage points different there. But again, if you want to differentiate, we can go to Sam Darnold. We can go to Brandon Cooks with that immense target share, and we can go to DJ Moore as well. I'm not going to use Davis Mills just because this is a tall order for Davis Mills to come in and put up a slate leading FanDuel performance against a defense that has been really, really strong to start the season. It's going to be Brandon Cooks and DJ Moore if I don't go with Darnold or McCaffrey. So the reason for DJ Moore that I like what I'm seeing from him is that he's at the 9.5 targets per game. That's a 28% target share, 34% of the team's air yards. But he's also getting downfield work, and downfield targets are very valuable for receivers, which is sizing. He's got one red zone target, one end zone target thus far. Robbie Anderson would be a potential option, but the sheer target share is not enough. The ADOT is crazy. The average depth of target, the downfield targets are there. But the reason that you would kind of play Robbie Anderson in your MVP slot tonight is you think this game isn't that high scoring, which is kind of fair, but Robbie Anderson's probably going to need a long touchdown. And with the volume that we've seen, and especially if Carolina doesn't have to throw the ball a lot, he's going to need a big he's going to need multiple big plays or an kind of unpredictable, like not even unpredictable, but like it is really hard to talk yourself into having Robbie Anderson just get his volume boosted in this game script. So I'm not that interested myself in Robbie Anderson at an MVP. I'm going to limit my exposure there to those top 4 at MVP. Kyle's asking, how should we view the Houston running backs tonight? So that's a good question. Again, 7.5 point underdogs with a low total. That's a little bit tricky in this sense. And I should have probably included positions just so I could filter a little more easily. But we would most likely prefer David Johnson from a game script standpoint. Again, I knew I was going to have some hiccups here. I'm just trying to throw all this together, make sure my bases are covered. But the 42% route rate is pretty strong. Philip Lindsay at 20%, Mark Ingram 13%. The snaps for David Johnson about 34%. I know Mark Ingram's had the better role, but this doesn't really profile as a game where Mark Ingram should be overly impactful. So if I was planning on rostering a Houston running back, it's going to be David Johnson, and that's a good kind of talking point here. Where if you're just starting to build single game lineups, you want to make sure that all of your lineups make sense. If you're running through an optimizer, I would still recommend going through the results of those and making sure you can kind of tell yourself the story of how that becomes the best lineup of the night. If we're seeing Mark Ingram in some optimized lineups paired with, let's say, like numerous Panthers, that's probably not going to kind of work out because the only path for that is that Mark Ingram dominates and they're able to run the ball, and then all of the production just has to come from volume for the Panthers. The path for that happening seems very, very slight. So I'm leaning with David Johnson if I'm going with any of the Houston running backs. Aaron says, get the real mod in here. Yeah, I get Jim out of here. Jim's just causing trouble, which is typical. Aaron also says, if everyone avoids Mills, doesn't it make sense to play Houston's running backs? So here's kind of the issue with that is Houston's running backs don't have a massive ceiling. Anecdotally, I don't know what their off the top of my head, what their MVP or even flex odds are. I should throw in team here so I can. So I'm just taking some notes. First time I was running through this. Usually I'm just on the PGA show here, and I got all that kind of figured out. But obviously we have Christian McCaffrey, but the salary for Mark Ingram makes it difficult. Number fire simulations or projections do like Mark Ingram as the baseline, but for me, the path for Ingram to be that relevant again just seems a little bit more narrow. So again, if you're asking if everyone avoids Mills, just play the Houston running backs. The odds that these guys really get to like 12 FanDuel points is kind of small unless they score. And for me, I would bank on David Johnson kind of scoring from a negative script perspective, or possibly on a check down, something like that. We could see Mark. And so the kind of the other part to that question is if Houston tries to hide Davis Mills and just hand the ball off a lot, there's going to be some volume, but carries alone don't really add up to a lot of FanDuel points. Mark Ingram could have 18 carries for 60 yards, and David Johnson in negative game script could have, 4 or 5 targets for 30 yards, maybe get that touchdown. So like we can't just chase kind of volume without any targets for running backs. So I'm kind of out on Houston's running backs aside from David Johnson. That's kind of the way that I'm playing it for tonight. Dre asks, do you think there's a chance Driscoll gets to play at quarterback? I mean, it's possible, but that's kind of that's some galaxy brain stuff, which I typically love, especially if you're playing. If you're locking in Christian McCaffrey, you want to find ways. Sorry, I should clarify. Locking in Christian McCaffrey at MVP is going to be hard to build any lineups where Christian McCaffrey is not in those. It's going to take a very specific an injury or a very specific game script where Christian McCaffrey just probably is limited to like 80 total yards, doesn't score, and some touchdowns just go elsewhere. That's about it. I don't think you really even need to play Driscoll though, because we have ways to differentiate. Again, I think David Johnson, and then possibly even kickers in this spot. We could see kickers be a little bit more relevant, although I do think that their rate goes down in optimals in this kind of sample. So yeah, that's a little bit tough, but still one out of 4 optimals does include a kicker. I personally won't get to Jeff Driscoll, but I kind of understand it. For him to play and be relevant enough, he's gonna have to come in pretty early because he's also gonna play a pretty difficult defense. So Aaron says Ingram's FanDuel salary way too high. I agree with that, especially for the reasons that I talked about with just minimal pass catching. Pass catching just matters unless we're talking a very positive game script in a single game slate. So McCaffrey has the rushing, and he'll also have the receiving role. I know I've talked about him a ton, but it really does come down to trying to figure out how we value McCaffrey, whether you're going to be overweight on him or underweight on him. And what I mean by that is try to figure out where you think the public will land on Christian McCaffrey. We'll just limit it to MVP exposure. If you think he's on half of all lineups at MVP, do you want to play him in 30% of your MVP lineups or in 70%? So you can be overweight or underweight relative to the public. Now you can always be about even. You're also not going to, guess exactly correctly what his popularity is. He might get up to like 60 or 70%. We don't usually see that a lot with running backs, but I could see it in this situation. You could click the lock button on McCaffrey, hit MVP. I think that's justifiable. Then maybe you're more open to playing some backup quarterbacks, but for me, it's going to be a night where I'm overweight on Christian McCaffrey at MVP. But really, then if I'm doing that, making sure that I still get my Sam Darnold MVP lineups, and then probably just due to sheer nature of not being able to play tons of Brandon Cooks or DJ Moore in MVP lineups, just maybe nixing them all together and hoping that they don't erupt for tonight. Okay, I think I'm all caught up with questions here. So I kind of want to at least dig into Davis Mills and what we saw from him in week 2. The 8 for 18 for 102 yards. I know this is probably really small for everyone, but um, a nice 11-yard ADOT. NFL average is around 7.8, which is around where Sam Darnold is. Just the expected points per dropback, not particularly good. Davis Mills also was a highly recruited prospect coming out. Just never really took the leap. Whenever he was given that full season in college. So I think that he's just tough to justify. Even if he's going to be unpopular, we're looking at a really difficult matchup. So for me, Davis Mills not really someone that I'm considering. Question from DJ: who has more yards, Cooks or Moore? Okay, so I'll just pull up number fires baseline projections here for this, and I'll let you know what. So it's about dead even for Cooks and Moore. If I had to bet, it would be Brandon Cooks sheerly due to expected volume. We're projecting him for about half a target more than DJ Moore. I know that the matchup's incredibly difficult, but the target share for him is just immense. Now I love DJ Moore too, but if I had to pick one to lead in yardage, it's going to be Brandon Cooks, because there's, again, you got to think about like the paths to certain things happening. The paths to Brandon Cooks maybe not posting a big yardage output is, there are paths to that because it's a tough matchup. The path for him not to be targeted very often whenever they have virtually nobody else to throw to, that seems a little bit less likely. So if I had to pick one straight up, it's going to be Brandon Cooks for tonight for the most yards between he and DJ Moore. Okay. Sam Darnold, though, the reason that I kind of like him for the MVP kind of pivot away from Christian McCaffrey, just that it's a promising matchup for him overall. Houston's defense has kind of started out okay, but I wouldn't expect that to linger too much. The 292 yards from him, a decent enough ADOT and just a lot of weapons to throw to. And the thing to kind of keep in mind with Carolina here is I talked about Brandon Cooks having a crazy target market share. Aside from DJ Moore, who his 3-year average of touchdown expectation is crazy low. Like, he should have way more touchdowns than he does. That could start to speak to just who he is. We see that with like Julio Jones. It's kind of strange for how good they are. But if Sam Darnold throws for 3 touchdowns and DJ Moore doesn't get one, and one does go to Brandon Zylstra, or, and then one to Robbie Anderson, one maybe to Terrace Marshall, who they schemed up some plays for already early on in the season, that's kind of the path to Sam Darnold being the MVP, where Christian McCaffrey isn't, but also no receiver has a massive amount of upside by comparison. Question from Larry: would you start Kirk, Aguilar, or Pascal this week? I would start Christian Kirk. I know his target shares are kind of just in line with everyone else in that offense, but it's a much better offensive situation for me. Not going to really want to have a whole lot of interest in that Indianapolis offense. So for me, it's pretty easily Christian Kirk. I feel pretty good about that for the weekend. Again, I do have on Number Fire some start sit simulations overall. And it kind of digs into every relevant play, kind of shows their baseline expectations for getting into the top 12 or top 24 for the week at their positions. So I think I pretty much covered like everything I have from a DFS standpoint. So I'm going to kick it over to Jim Sonis, and we're going to get the MLB portion of the show going.
What's up, Jim? Question for you. You yelled at me today viciously
Yes.
because I had talked about how the fact that I had sprained both my ankles previously.
Yes.
You were like, yes, you said this before. Did you know that Brandon Zylstra played in that game? I was playing against Brandon Zylstra, New London Spicer football up in northern Minnesota at the Metrodome.
Are you from Minnesota?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. You betcha that there in Minnesota. Eh? And he was in that game. I'm pretty sure he was like a freshman or a sophomore. And I think his brother was actually like the more relevant dude. I think his brother started with the J, but like Brandon Zylstra was in that game. So therefore, your Chris Conley is my Brandon Zylstra because like he's the only guy who makes me feel like I'm not totally washed. Like I could still be an NFL player if I tried because Brandon Zylstra is there.
I think we just got a new series idea where you try to make an NFL roster
out of me making like what position though? Like,
well, you said you thought you could make an NFL roster.
I would die. Like there is a good chance of death.
You just said you could make
No, I said I can pretend, I can dream that I can. It's I'm actually going to. Like I'm like 6 inches too short. I am like in an awkward like linebacker weight, but also not a linebacker physique. Like it's not going to go well if this happens. I just think that I want that dream to exist, and you're killing that dream I'm
just here to kill those dreams.
See, Joy's killing the dreams too. It's just rude. Like rude across the board. Brandon, get out of here. Go fill out some stupid lineups with stupid Sam Darnold, your stupid MVP slot. I'll put Brandon Zylstra at MVP, and we'll see who wins.
Please do.
I won't. Anyway, that's Brandon Gdula. Brandon, good luck tonight, and good luck this weekend.
Good luck to you.
All right, let's move now into our MLB Q&A for today, taking a look at the main slate for tonight. And it's not the best main slate by any means. So if you want to have some lingering NFL questions, you want to drop in the chat, I don't care. That's fine. We can be a bit more disorganized for today to talk about MLB DFS. The reason I am not super enthusiastic about this slate is because it is a 4-game slate for tonight over on FanDuel. It's not bad as long as we get Aaron Nola on this slate, because right now there are 2 pitchers I want to use. Those guys are Aaron Nola and Lance McCullers. Just don't know the weather for Nola. If we go over here to Dark Sky Weather and check out what it says there, it says there's rain in Philadelphia to start. The good thing, the saving grace here, is that our guy, Kevin Roth, over on Roto Grinders, has said that it looks like the rain should be moving out by some point tonight, which means that they're patient, they can play this game. The other good thing of that, based on that forecast by Kevin, is it means we're probably not going to get a mid-game delay. That's always the concern for pitchers, because if we get a delay in the middle of that game and Aaron Nola's on the mound, he might not warm back up. He might not come back out if the delay is too long. So to me, I think this does set up pretty well. This game is one of the first ones to lock on this slate. I think that is a good thing for tonight. So I feel better about Aaron Nola now than I did this morning. So I think that's the context through which I'm viewing tonight. I feel better about the way that works. So I do think that Aaron Nola, feeling a little bit more comfortable over the way that looks for today. Let's talk to Aaron first over on YouTube. Is the Philadelphia game on for tonight? As of now, yes. And again, feeling better about it. We'll see. Feeling good for right now, Aaron. Kevin on Roto Grinders does do an update around 5:30 or so. So follow at Kevin Roth WX on Twitter. See what he says at 5:30. But right now, Aaron, I am okay starting to fill out lineups under the assumption that Aaron Nola is good to go. That's the way I'd phrase that. DJ says White Sox clinched already. DJ, the good thing is, so I'm a Twins fan, as Brandon mentioned, I'm from Minnesota. I am a Twins fan, which means I grew up hating the White Sox, but my wife is a White Sox fan. So her dad will text me saying it's a family victory. Well, that was when the Twins were winning. He would say it's a family victory, but now I get to say family victory when the White Sox wins. It's a family divisional win for the White Sox, for the Sonus Powers household. So we're good to go, which helps a lot. William, do we think Philadelphia-Pittsburgh will play? I think so for right now. Leaning yes, William. I think we should be good to go. My level of confidence in that, I would say, is I think like I'm feeling, and this is not scientific, this is just like my sentiment. I'm thinking 80% chance we're good to go. I was going to say 70. I think it's 80% chance we're good to go, William. So like if you're filling out lineups tonight or like right now, I would say you should be okay, William. putting Nola in there tentatively, then checking back on the forecast later on. Let's talk to Aaron. He says the Toronto-Minnesota game is going over. Let's check out the total for that game. 9.5. I expect the Blue Jays to do a lot of work towards that. Let's check out the Twins versus Steven Matz. Matz, low strikeout rate, not the best batted ball data. I can see that. It is a little high at 9.5 to begin with, so I'm not taking the over myself, but Aaron, not going to talk you out of that one. I think that we're good to go there. Salvatore asking for thoughts on Jeff Driscoll. You mean the Cincinnati Bengals, like 6th-string wide receiver from back in the day? There was a time where he got switched to wide receiver during the preseason. He got released and then became like starter for an NFL team at quarterback. And all I wanted to do was use defenses against him. It didn't work a lot of times because he would like do these crazy scrambles and stuff like that. But no thanks. DJ, for a survivor league, should I stay with the Broncos for my pick to win this week, or should I go to a different team? I've already used Arizona and Buffalo. So the Broncos, what are the odds they're favored by 10 against a team this year? Probably not that high. I wouldn't think they'll be favored by 10 very often this year. They are at home, relatively healthy. I know Jerry Jeudy's not fully healthy right now, and he won't be playing, but I think the Broncos are probably a pretty solid pick, DJ, because they've got 2 matches with the Chiefs, 2 matches with the Chargers, 2 with the Raiders. I think the Broncos are probably a pretty good pick there, and I'd be comfortable going with them for right now. Aaron, how many home runs in Minnesota tonight? Okay, let's make a number here. I think that the Jays are in a good spot against Pineda, so that helps. Byron Buxton might not play, which lowers the projected home run total by like 6-ish home runs or so. So I would say 2.5, Aaron. I mean, I'd probably take the under on that, but let's say 2.5 home runs tonight between the Twins and the Jays. William, do you think Minnesota will go under rostered? I would guess that they would, but I'm also not as interested in them because Matz has generally had good contact suppression. He has not had that as much recently. The data I have here from Matz is his past 8 starts with fewer sliders and more changeups. The hard hit rate is up to 39%. Fly ball rate is up to 37%. You know, league averages, those are both like a tiny bit above average. The fly ball rate's actually a bit above average. So that's interesting. Let's check out what the results have been for Matz in this time, because especially in like small samples, sometimes Robbie Ray is not even on this slate. This is ridiculous. I don't know why it always goes to the wrong one, but whatever. Steven Matz. Okay, we want to look at his past 8 starts with that slider usage being down. I don't want to count out 8s. We're going to go here to go to the game log, go to pitch type. Okay, so slider usage way down. So let's start here on August 4th. Go there. Boop. Go to the dashboard. That's 9 starts. Okay, so whatever. In that time, 2.50 ERA. That is in addition to the good or decent peripherals. The Twins, when they faced him last week, let's see what the batted ball data was in that game. Did put the ball in the air, did get 2 barrels, did have a 47% hard hit rate. The swing and strike rate was 10.4%. That's actually not terrible for the Twins in that game, and now they get him in Minnesota. So I don't think they're off the map, William, but I would say that they're not super high for me. I would say the top stacks for me for today are the Blue Jays 1. I think the Rangers are 2. I know they're terrible, but I think they're number 2. Honestly, the Twins might be 3. So maybe I'm just higher on them than I thought I was. Actually, the Phillies are up there too. I know they've been terrible, whatever. I don't really want to go there, but like we might have to. It's a small slate. So the Twins are 3rd or 4th for me. So they might not wind up flying under the radar just because people don't have a lot of other places to go. Check out what the heat map is saying here, see the implied totals, and see what we can expect popular stacks to be for today. I think the Jays have to be first. Yeah, Jays first, then Phillies, then Astros against Cobb. Maybe the Twins will. So yeah, I think there's a chance they will, William. I'm talking myself into them as we go along here, but we'll see. I think that the Twins are okay. Let's talk to Kyle. Thinking about stacking both sides of the Baltimore-Texas game, but it makes my stomach a little sick. Don't blame you. Don't blame you. I do think that Texas is a good stack. I also wanted to vomit, Kyle, when I realized that I had to stack them. But they're facing Zach Lowther. Lowther, you know, he's made 3 starts. The data in those 3 starts, not super inspiring, I would say, is the word there. if you expand it to look at when he was in the bullpen, when he was in the minors, that's also not super inspiring. So although the Rangers are a team I've targeted a couple pitchers with lefties against this week, I do still think that they're an okay stack for today, and they're probably the number 2 stack behind the Jays. They do have a lot of value. Let's check out the lineup here for Texas, see if it is out yet. It is indeed. Okay, so I like Garcia. I like Ibanez. I like Peters batting down the 7th. I think that's fine. Then we're deciding, do we chase the uptick recently for kind of Falefa? Do we check out Solak? How do we handle that? But I do think that they're okay. I think as long as we're willing to be selective, Kyle, I think that the Rangers grade out well. Orioles are facing Glenn Otto. Otto's had really bad results in the majors, but his peripherals are a healthy amount better. Let's pull up this over here. It's not just the peripherals too. Like he's actually, if you look at the projection systems, what they say about Glenn Otto, they're actually reasonably optimistic, I would say. That's the way I'd phrase that. The bat has him as a 3.99 ERA. Steamer has 4.57. Those numbers aren't too bad. 3.83 skill interactive ERA across 4 starts, 25% strikeout rate. Now that strikeout rate pretty likely to come down. Check out his CSW rate. CSW rate is 28.3%. That's actually around league average. So that's been pretty good. He's been getting a lot of called strikes via probably, fooling some dudes. So that's good. I would say that ERA for Otto will probably come down as the sample expands. So to me, I think that I think Baltimore is fine. I prefer the ranges between the two. I think that if you want to make the assumption that Otto's struggles continue, you can definitely feel good about Baltimore. I think that I'll just put them lower because the peripherals are good. The projection systems do like Otto as well. I think there is enough there where I'm okay being a little bit lower on the Orioles for today. Let's talk to Brandon says Teddy Bridgewater revenge game for the Jets versus the Broncos. We have a Teddy Bridgewater revenge game. A Logan Thomas revenge game is this week. I'm trying to remember if there are any other big ones. A Jack Cohen revenge game for Notre Dame, Wisconsin. I think that's probably the big one. Biggest one, even bigger than Teddy, if you can believe that. I think that's probably the biggest one of this week. DJ, why doesn't FanDuel let you play the second game of a doubleheader in the main slate? You may want to, but I don't, because they're a headache. Not only are they just 7 innings, which is stupid. I hate 7-inning games. Like, that's awful. It limits the volume. But also, the lineups don't come out as soon. Like, you're not going to know who's playing before lock, and I hate that. So you might like that, DJ, but I think it's a massive, massive headache, and I want no part of it. So personally, I'm glad they don't do that. Obviously, bias alert that I have FanDuel logos all behind me, but I actually like it personally. And that's not me, saying this because their logo is behind me. It's saying because I actually think I hate second games doubleheaders. Like when they used to have those games in the slate when they were 9 innings, I hated it. Hate it. So I'm glad they don't do that anymore. Let's talk to William. What Jays do you deem to be priorities for today? So with Nola being on the slate, if we assume that the weather forecast holds and we can use him, it means I don't need to be as value hunty, if that's a word / phrase, as I was before. So although I'm still going to be on Alejandro Kirk, let's put him in there. And if Grichuk plays, I'll be there. I don't know if he'll play. He might not. He's in projected lineup, but I'm not totally sold that'll be the case. If we use Kirk and Grichuk, that gets me to 34.67. I can go to Vlad at third base, and let's put Teoscar in there above Semien and Bichette. Check out their numbers versus righties to make sure that's not totally off base with regards to Teoscar specifically relative to Semien and Bichette. That's kind of the main decision point for me. I've been a little bit worried about Springer with the knee stuff recently. I'm on the wrong team. Why did I go to Tampa Bay? Oh, that's right there. That's why. Click the wrong team. Okay, so Semien's at a 285 ISO, Springer 289, Teoscar 178, Bichette at 161. Pretty sure Teoscar's been hitting the ball pretty well recently. Maybe I should just go Semien and fill second base and get that out of the way. Let's see that. Okay. He is $4,100. Woof. Good job. All right, 30-50 left I can make work. So I guess I would go with Semien over Teoscar. I really respect Teoscar as a hitter. So that's why my default was to go towards him. But I think this is a pretty good 4-player stack. If we don't get Grichuk, that's a bummer, but we can go to Jake Lamb, a bit lower in the order. He should be in there for today. So we can do that. Does lock up, because you can't use Kirk, Vlad, and Lamb without locking up your catcher or your utility spot. But I think that's worth it for tonight. So I don't mind this one. Don't mind getting Teoscar in there. Don't mind Grichuk. If I had to make out a default stack, though, I would say if we get Grichuk in there, this would be my default stack of the Blue Jays under the assumption I am using Nola for tonight. Let's see, get DJ's home run calls. He's got Jahmai Jones. We got Byron Buxton. Again, Buxton might not play, so keep an eye on that. So he's got a foot injury, missed last night. Kepler double-dogged yesterday despite the awful weather. So Max Kepler going deep. Tyler Stevenson and Jose Barrero. Also, I'm considering Jahmai Jones. Stevenson or Barrero for my utility slot. Who do you think I should take? Okay, let's go. Oopsies. So he's batting 6th. Okay. Barrero. He's not on the main slate, so I can't talk about him. Stevenson's not either. So they're not on the main slate for FanDuel, so I've not researched that game. The Reds tend to struggle quite a bit against lefties. Stevenson is good against lefties, so that's one positive there. I would say those options, I'd probably be prioritizing Stevenson. Like DJ, I'm assuming you're playing like a 640 slate. I would say Stevenson is the better option of those three, but Jones is the one who is on the main slate. So I guess you could go there. I don't really want to use him against Otto, but it's fine. I think that would work. Steve, why aren't any NFL games with entry fees of 05 to 25 cents? I would check. I guess I'm kind of surprised that there aren't, Steve. So you can if you go to the lobby, you can toggle it down and make the entry fee as low as you want and see what's there. At least tinker around with that, see if there are. I'm sorry that there aren't. I obviously have no control over that, but I think that there would be. DJ's Buxton is in there, by the way. Okay, so I missed the Twins lineup. It's right there. It's been in the whole time, and I just missed it. My bad. Thank you, DJ, for pointing that out. Buxton's in there. Polanca's in there. Donaldson. Garver's back. Okay. What's Garver's salary? Garv sauce. $2,500. Okay. All right, he played one game, 3-hit game for Mitch Garver, his first game back, facing a lefty, $2,500. I kind of don't hate Mitch Garver as a one-off. I think that's pretty fun. Maybe I should boost that home run projection for Twins Blue Jays. So when I thought that Buxton might not play, didn't know about Garver being in there. I guess he's been back for a bit now, but still. It was 2.5 before. I will say 13.5 home runs for Twins versus Blue Jays for tonight, now that I know that Buxton and Garver are both in there. So 13.5 home runs. Was it 16? 13.5 home runs, the projection for Twins versus the home run projection for Twins versus Blue Jays for today. One guy we have not yet discussed on this main slate is Lance McCullers, checking in at $10,200. I've got him number 2 behind Nola, and if Nola can't go, I do feel good about McCullers, building around him, kind of making him my commitment pitcher for today. McCullers in his past 10 starts more curveballs is a 3.82 skill interactive ERA, 27% strikeout rate, really good batted ball data. The downside is he is walking a lot of guys. What helps there is that the Angels don't walk a whole lot. They've been their offense has struggled a lot in the second half. So I think McCullers is a pretty solid number 2 option. I wish he wouldn't walk as many guys, but the good thing is he goes super deep into games. 111 pitches his last time out. Nola doesn't right now. I think they're trying to keep him from getting too deep in the order for a third time because he's not gone more than 22 batters faced, I think, since that Padres game. Maybe it was the one after that or something like that. It's been a while since we saw Nola go deep in a game. So even with Nola being available, I wouldn't hate putting McCullers above him for today, just because I feel better about McCullers going super deep in the game. Don't like his effectiveness while he's out there as much as I like Nola's. Don't like his matchup. Don't like that he's on the road. But length matters a lot. So I do think that McCullers pretty justifiable over Nola. Again, straight up, I prefer Nola, but I would not hate on you for putting McCullers number 1. And for single entry, given that Nola, the weather seems okay, and given that he's facing the Pirates, I think it's not a terrible idea in single entry to go McCullers over Nola, paying up to be contrarian and I think that's not a terrible idea for today. Aaron says, now you're talking, Jim, for the home run projection. I like 13.5. Do you want the over or the under, Aaron? I think I might have put it too low. So if you want the over, I think that's fair. I can understand that, but figured at least ask. So let me know if you want over or under 13.5 for you, Aaron. Okay, DJ, do you think Marwin Gonzalez, Martin Maldonado, Phil Gosselin, or Jack Mayfield goes yard tonight? Don't like the Angels guys against McCullers because McCullers, again, good batted ball data. This is over his past 10 starts, 34% hard hit rate with a 25% fly ball rate. That is good for dinger prevention. So I wouldn't look at the Angels guys for home runs just because McCullers has been so good in that regard. As far as the Astros guys facing Alex Cobb, let's see what Alex Cobb has done since he came back. He's only had one start, went 66 pitches. I'm pretty sure his velocity was good in that one start, though, if I recall correctly. But let's just check this out here. 2 hits and 2 walks, 5 strikeouts in that first game back for Alex Cobb. Oh, I almost clicked the wrong part. Okay. Let's pull up the pitch type in that game. More 4-seamers, fewer sinkers. That's a good thing. We always hate sinkers, so that's good. Splitter velo and sinker velo. Splitter velo is actually up a bit. Sinker velo up. Curveball velocity up. That's why I pulled the past 5 starts for Cobb in that time. Let's check out the results here quickly. It's actually pitched pretty well. Good for him. That's good. I'm glad to see Alex Cobb do well. The injuries have been annoying, so glad to see him faring well. I don't really want to go... I don't really want to get into too many Astros guys because I think that Cobb is pretty good. I think if you're looking for some homers, trying to identify guys who might go deep, I might look at other games just because both Cobb and McCullers do a good enough job. DJ says, I just thought Mayfield would go deep against his former team. Yeah, I love revenge games, DJ. Big time in on those for sure. And Abraham Toro is not facing them tonight, but like Abraham Toro is like a revenge game deity with the number of times he donged against the Astros. So if anyone is going to be, close to revenge games, it'd be someone tied to the Astros in some way. So I think that I get it, DJ. I'm always in on a good revenge game, but not for Mayfield for me personally. Other stuff to note here for today. Again, I think that let's actually just build out a Ranger stack because why not? Let's do it with McCullers in there. Let's put Peters in there. Let's put Adolis Garcia in there. And let's put Ibanez in there. Batting third. Take that. And at second base. If we do that, we're up to 32-40 left. That's not too bad. So we're deciding between, do we want to go with Connor Falefa? Let's see if he's been doing that with just steals or if it's been with some power. Because I know he's been putting up good totals recently. Not a lot of power yet. Mostly via steals that he's had the upside, but he's done well overall. Kind of encouraging there. Okay, Tavares, not the biggest power guy. Let's check out Nick Solak against lefties. See what he's doing. Wouldn't mind going to Solak, batting 6th, right in front of Peters. Okay, Solak, 110 ISO, not ideal. See what he's been doing overall here recently. Because if he's just been, front-loaded a bit. All right. Let's go to StatCast on Solak. And let's go since the start of September. Okay. 32% hard rate. That's not super good. So I feel like maybe not Solak, maybe not. I don't know. So DJ asked about Jonah Heim. I thought about him too. Did think about that. Not going to lie. 209 ISO versus lefties across 72 plate appearances. That's actually a pretty decent sample. So actually, DJ, why not? Let's do it. Let's ride a Jonah Heim for today. I think he's 23. I don't mind that, honestly. I think that's pretty fun. It gets you more flexibility for your Jays if you want to stack them in there. So yeah, I think Jonah Heim works. Let's do it, DJ. Let's ride with Jonah Heim. DJ says Nick Gordon was sick against the Cubs. Yeah, he had that first win game. He had like an Oppo Taco that just got over the netting out there. And I was pretty impressed. I haven't been super sold on Nick Gordon so far, but played pretty well there. I'll take that. It's good to see the young guys playing well. Like Joe Ryan was sick. So I think I just care about the young dudes playing well. They've done that for me. That's all I ask. So more Nick Gordon, more Joe Ryan. Let's just get the young dudes churning up there in Minnesota. That is all that we have here for today on the FanDuel Live Q&A. But we'll wrap up the week tomorrow. I was going to say next day, but that's a very stupid phrase. We'll wrap up the week tomorrow with our snake draft with myself, Brandon Gdula, and JJ Zachariason. That is at 4 p.m. We'll have the MLB Q&A following at 4:30. Here is the starting pitcher slate for tomorrow in case you want a head start on that. We'll be back here again 4:30 tomorrow to break down that. Big thank you to Brandon Gdula for the lead-in talking about Thursday Night Football. Follow Brandon on Twitter at Gdula13. As he mentioned, our DFS Heat Check podcast for week number 3 already posted, breaking down our thoughts on the main slate with thoughts on game stacks, position by position breakdowns, some key process things to help influence things, and more. Find that by searching for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Big thank you to Joy Affleck, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Joy, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you tonight with your single game slates, with your main slates for MLB, and everything else. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.